Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Obviously, a disappointing start to the Mike Elko era in College Station. Losing to a Notre Dame team where I think that's where I want to start is I think this Notre Dame team is really good, specifically on the defensive side of the football. So, although this loss, I think it stings because it kind of feels like a lot of losses that we saw under the Jimbo Fisher era. I do think this Notre Dame team is really good. Now that does not expunge Texas A&M and a few things that I think they for sure need to clean up going into 2024. That being said, I do think there were some encouraging things as well. Want to get into what we saw. Got a chance to watch this game back a couple of different times since Saturday night. Kind of want to empty the notebook in terms of what I think Texas A&M needs to do better as a football team going forward. Now, before we get into it, and as always, one of the Texas A&M fans that it's no secret that I was very high. I still am very high on this program in 2024. I don't think this loss defines the 2024 season in the slightest. That being said, wanted to say thank you to you guys. Although a tough loss, y'all have always rocked with the fellas, and we appreciate it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And I think much more importantly, let it fly in the comment section. What did you? I'm sure many Texas A&M fans that are listening to this on a Wednesday afternoon have for sure saw this and watched this game back couple of different times. Would love to hear some of your big takeaways and what Texas A&M needs to do better heading into 2024. So let it fly in the comments section. Without further ado, let's get into this one. I want to start with the quarterback play, which Conner Weigman owned it in front of the media on Monday. He said it wasn't good enough, and that's kind of what it was, right? 12 of 30 for 100 yards, 2 interceptions. I think the most frustrating stat line for Conner Weigman, a quarterback that we all know is super talented, clearly looked uncomfortable in this football game. And again, a lot of credit to this Notre Dame defense. They have a good pass rush. They have an elite secondary. This is a Notre Dame defense that might be the best defensive unit they see all season. I truly might believe that. This Notre Dame defense was very, very impressive. That being said, if Texas A&M expects to win these kind of football games, which I think should be the expectation, you need better quarterback play from Conner Weigman. 1 of 6, 10 plus yards down the field. We all kind of knew heading into this football game that Coach Colin Klein would try to get the quick game going, not as much aggression down the field. One, because the Notre Dame secondary is very good, but I think also more importantly, this Notre Dame pass rush is good. And you kind of wanted to get the football out of Conner Weigman's hands quick. But when you did have the opportunities to work down the field, you got to be able to hit those throws. And I think the first one, the biggest example is to Noah Thomas on the interception. Noah Thomas runs a clean route, creates a lot of separation, throw that probably should go for 20 plus yards and ends up giving Notre Dame a short field and they end up getting points. One of the biggest things that we had as a key to the game in this football game, especially with how good Texas A&M's defense is, don't give Notre Dame short fields. Like if you have to punt the football, so be it. Let Notre Dame drive the length of the field to score points on this Texas A&M defense, and giving them those 2 short fields, it was kind of pivotal in losing this football game. Now, what are things that Texas A&M can do to maybe help Conner Weigman get him a little bit more comfortable within this offense? I think most importantly, I think the pass catchers have to be better. And I think one of the biggest question marks we all had about this Texas A&M team heading into 2024 was who was going to be that wide receiver one. When the moment's the biggest, who's the guy that Conner Weigman trusts and has the most chemistry with to move the chains, to make a play? You kind of saw the lack thereof in this football game. You look at your leading receiver, Jade Walker, 6 catches for only 31 yards. There wasn't really a guy that Texas A&M could lean on in the passing attack. I think another thing that kind of made me scratch my head a little bit was the lack of getting tight ends and running backs involved. You saw it early. I think they should have hit a touchdown pass to E.J. Smith out of the backfield. Conner Weigman misses the throw. Maybe E.J. Smith can come up with that football. Whatever it might be, I think it was there. And I was kind of surprised Colin Klein didn't go back to some of those concepts where you look back at his history of offenses at Kansas State. It was very centered around running backs and tight ends catching the football. And you didn't really see that for Texas A&M in this football game against Notre Dame, which, again, kind of made me scratch my head. One, because we've seen Colin Klein go to that. But I think more importantly, when you have a struggling quarterback who is clearly uncomfortable, give him some easy throws. Let him build some confidence. And I felt like Coach Colin Klein didn't really go to that. And you want to get your playmakers in space. Didn't think they did enough of that. Now, the one positive I would take from this Texas A&M offensive performance was I think the offensive line was pretty damn solid, and this has been the bugaboo for Texas A&M over the last couple of years. I mean, Jimbo Fisher, Coach Adazio, just not getting the right recipe and development on the offensive line, even with the injury to Mark Naboo at center. I thought Texas A&M played pretty solid on the offensive line against the Notre Dame defensive line that, again, I think is one of the better units that you see in the country. I don't think Le'Veon Moss's stat line reflects it, but that kid ran extremely hard. 20 carries for 70 yards and a touchdown. If there's one positive on the offensive side of the football is I think the offensive line is going to be okay. And that was a huge storyline, right? You bring in Adam Cushing. You kind of get a feeling that Adam Cushing, Tommy Moffitt, Mike Elko is going to get this unit right. To see that unit, I think, substantially get better from 2023 is a really good sign for Texas A&M. Now, going to the defensive side of the football, I think the biggest thing that made me scratch my head was Notre Dame rushed the football for 200 yards, and that wasn't something that we had on our bingo card, right? Why did I take Texas A&M in this football game? Was I thought the defensive line was going to be able to overwhelm an offensive line that had what 6 career starts going into this football game here. I don't think the defensive line was necessarily bad. I think you had some really bad run fits at the linebacker position as well. But in this game, we kind of knew was going to be an ugly rock fight. You knew you were going to have to stop the run, and I don't think Texas A&M did, especially in the second half. And I don't think the offense did the defensive line any favors in terms of not staying on the field enough on in the second half. That being said, you kind of expected this defensive line to be really stingy against the run, and they weren't as much as you thought they were. Now, the positive, and what I'll say here is I think this Texas A&M defensive line is going to be just fine. I think Mike Denbrock did a really good job getting the football out of Riley Leonard's hands quickly to kind of mitigate the pass rush. And then more importantly, designing and scheming up some really nice run concepts to get a guy like Jeremiah Love in some space. Number 5, big takeaway that I thought was a positive was that I think the secondary is going to be pretty dang good. I mean, you look at that pass interference call, didn't agree with that one. I believe it was in the first half of that football game. There was not a ton of room and not a lot of separation that was created by Notre Dame. And Mike Denbrock's a very, very good coach in terms of designing plays to get his playmakers in space. Thought Texas A&M tackled well in space. I thought Texas A&M was sticky in coverage, even with Dalton Brooks getting kicked out of the game due to targeting. This unit looked pretty good. You go back to 2023, blown coverages, bad communication, missing tackles in space. You didn't see any of that from this Texas A&M secondary, which again I think bodes well in terms of this team going on in 2024. If you clean up the passing attack, which again is going to inherently get better because you're not going to see a secondary as good as Notre Dame's the rest of the season. I think this Texas A&M team can win a lot of ball games. And we kind of said heading in, if this offensive line can figure it out, this team's going to be dangerous. I kind of still believe that. And I think finally you just want to see them make the plays to win football games, which has really been again a good kind of a bugaboo under Jimbo Fisher. When you have the opportunities to make game changing plays, you got to make them. And Texas A&M didn't, and Notre Dame did. And that was kind of the key in this football game. It was a tied ball game going into the fourth quarter against a team that is a bona fide top 10 team in the country. Look, there's no moral victories when you're Texas A&M. I 100% get that. I'm not trying to get up here and say Texas A&M fans should be happy about the result, but there are some positives that I do think you can take away from this football game. We'll see how this unit kind of comes together throughout the 2024 season. Again, if there's one thing I do trust with Mike Elko, it's he's going to run a tight ship, have a strong culture. These guys are going to play hard and consistent every single Saturday. That's what you want to see going forward. You have a nice opportunity to kind of just get a bounce back game against McNeese State. And then Florida Gators up next. So it's going to be a fun next couple of weeks. I think we're going to get a good sense of what this Texas A&M team's about in 2024. We'll cut it there. Again, appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.